All right, let's dive into the absolutely epic history of Karnataka. This is a region in southern India that was forged by, get this, almost 2,000 years of conflict. We're talking ancient dynasties, colonial clashes. It's a massive story of power, resistance, and the incredible rise and fall of empires.
In this quote, from one of the region's most famous and honestly most formidable rulers, Tipu Sultan, well, it just perfectly captures the spirit of this whole story. This relentless drive for sovereignty and power, that's what defines centuries of Karnataka's history.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll kick things off with the ancient Gangas, jump forward to the big clash between the Marathas and Mysore, then zoom in on the legendary Tiger of Mysore, Tipu Sultan. After that, we'll unpack the Anglo-Mysore Wars and see how it all led to the dawn of the British Raj. Let's get started.
First up, ancient foundations. Let's go way back, all the way back to the 4th century to meet the region's first real powerhouse, the Western Ganga dynasty.
You know, the thing that's just incredible about the Gangas is how long they lasted. Look at this timeline. They ruled for over 650 years. That's just wild. From their founding way back around 350 through the reigns of powerhouse kings like Durvanida, they built this legacy of stability and influence that just went on for centuries. And they weren't just long-lasting. These guys were organized. They built this really sophisticated system for running things, They divided their kingdom into districts called Rashtra, and those were split into groups of villages called Visaya. By the 8th century, they were calling these groups of villages Nadu, and the whole thing was held together by these local landlords, the Govundas, who were the backbone of the whole operation. But maybe their most breathtaking legacy is this, the Gomateshwara statue. Commissioned way back in 983, it is the largest monolithic statue in the entire world. Think about that for a second. It's carved from a single piece of granite, stands 60 feet tall. It's just this monumental testament to their cultural power that you can still go and see today. Absolutely incredible. So after the Gangas, the next several centuries were a bit of a shuffle. You had different dynasties rising and falling. Fast forward to the 18th century, and all this change created a kind of power vacuum. And into that vacuum stepped two new, major forces, ready to completely reshape the map of South India. By the 1700s, the whole political landscape was really dominated by two major players. In one corner, you've got the huge, sprawling Maratha Empire, and in the other, the rising, super-ambitious kingdom of Mysore. You can just feel it, right? The stage was set for a massive clash for control.
All right, Marathas versus Mysore. Let's really dig into this intense rivalry because it basically defined the entire era.
And this really shows you the difference between them. On one hand, you have the Marathas. They were this vast, sprawling confederacy, an empire that at its peak covered about 2.5 million square kilometers. Just massive. On the other hand, you have Mysore. It's a more compact, consolidated kingdom, but it's led by the brilliant Hyder Ali and his son, Tipu Sultan, and it was famous for its disciplined, super-modern army. And man, the rivalry was fierce. In 1767, the Marathas, under Peshwa Madhavrao, dealt a huge blow to Mysore. They didn't just defeat their army, they marched right into Sriganapatna, Mysore's capital city. At this point, you'd have to say the Marathas definitely had the upper hand. But Mysore had a leader who was about to change everything. And this brings us to one of the most iconic figures in all of Indian history, Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. So, Tipu Sultan. He ruled the Kingdom of Mysore from 1782 to 1799. But he wasn't just a king. He was this formidable military strategist, a real innovator, and an absolutely implacable enemy of the British East India Company. He saw them as the #1 threat to his kingdom's independence, and he was not gonna back down. And Tipu's strength wasn't just on the battlefield. The guy was an innovator. He pioneered the use of Mysorean rockets. We're talking iron-cased artillery that was so advanced, it literally terrified European armies. He also introduced a whole new system of coinage, and he was a master diplomat. He even tried to form an alliance with Napoleon and France to take on the British. And, fun fact, his court was also a patron of the arts, including those famous Chanapatna toys. So, with all this innovation and fierce resistance, you just knew a collision was coming. And it did. A head-on collision with the British East India Company in a series of conflicts we now call the Anglo-Mysore Wars. Okay, so this was basically a four-part struggle for the future of South India. The first war was really Mysore challenging the British. The second one was a messy, alliance-driven conflict that didn't really solve anything. The third war, though, that was a big defeat for Tipu. He had to give up half his territory. But he absolutely refused to back down, which led the British to launch one final massive invasion to take him out for good.
And just look at the numbers for that final war. 60,000 plus. That's the combined force the British put together with their allies, the Marathas and Hyderabad. They marched on Mysore to face Tipu's army of around 30,000. I mean, the odds were just overwhelmingly stacked against him.
So, we come to the dawn of the British Raj. This final, desperate fight wouldn't just seal Mysore's fate, it would mark the beginning of a brand new colonial era for the entire subcontinent.
The whole war came to a head right here, at the siege of Tipu's capital, Seringapatam. The date was May 4th, 1799. After a siege that lasted a month, British forces finally broke through the fortress walls, and it all came down to one last bloody battle inside the city.
And Tipu Sultan was killed right there, fighting in the breach, defending his capital to the very last. When the British commander, General George Harris, heard the news, he reportedly said, "Now India is ours." And wow, that wasn't just a victory cry, it was a prophecy. Because the victory over Mysore really was the critical turning point. With their toughest opponent gone, the British then turned their attention to the Marathas and defeated them too. This single victory consolidated their claim over South Asia and paved the way for what would become almost 150 years of the British Empire in India.
So when you think about it, from ancient monoliths that have stood for 1,000 years to modern rockets that changed warfare, Karnataka's history is just this incredible story of clashing empires. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? What does this long struggle for power really teach us about the legacies these empires leave behind?
Hey, if you enjoyed this explainer, you should definitely check out our South Asia history playlist for more. And of course, subscribe to Notebook Summaries so you don't miss what's coming up next. Thanks for watching.